Hey, Amy.
Yeah, Juan.
Give me that beat.
It's Baseball Shangri-La with Amy Cuevas and Juan Ramirez.
What's up, party people? She is Amy Cuevas. I am Juan Ramirez. You are listening or watching Baseball Shangri-La. For those of you listening on the audio portion, please make sure you're subscribed to the podcast. Rate us, write us a review, spread the word. If you're watching us on YouTube, make sure you're subscribed to our YouTube channel. Hit that notification button. Give us a thumbs up. Leave us comments. We love engaging with you guys. And most importantly, make sure you're following us on social media. On X at BB Shangri-La, on Instagram, YouTube, and Twitch at Baseball Shangri-La. She is Amy Cuevas. I am Juan Ramirez. Let's get things started. Amy, long time no see. ¿Cómo estás?
I know. I have a semi-base running blender from last episode because I made you sing by accident.
No, that is not.
You. And so for anybody who doesn't know, if you feel like your ears bleed, check out our last episode.
I challenge. That is not a mistake. That is not a mistake.
I may have accidentally started singing the Jeffersons and set one off.
Well, moving on up to the east side, to the east side, to a deluxe apartment in the sky. We're moving on up.
Oh, man. Now we're back again to 0 days without a base running blender because I just did it again. You'd think I would know better.
Who knew that there was such a love of the Jeffersons on this show? And for you young kids,
it's all on that side. I mean, I don't hate the Jeffersons, but clearly I don't share the love like you do.
Okay, for you young kids, the Jeffersons was this show. Anyways, I digress. Let's start the show with this.
Speaking of comedy.
Yeah, speaking of comedy, as you call it, the Doyers had a comedy night here in Los Angeles last night on their off day. At the time that we were recording this, it happened the night before. So when you see this, you know, it was Wednesday night. They had a comedy night.
That's not an off day. They had like brunch baseball going on.
That's right. They had an early game, but so then they went and played a baseball game, and then after the game, they decided they were all going to go to comedy night. And the comedy night that we're talking about was Will Smith was doing a comedy show as part of the Netflix This Is a Joke Festival. And it was benefiting his foundation that both he and his wife Kara have called Catching Hope. So I haven't seen any of the footage. I'm sure probably Backstage Dodgers is going to end up showing it late next week. Vince Samperio from Locked On Dodgers, I know was at the show, and he tweeted a joke as Will Smith came on stage saying, I'm gonna just recap. I'm not. Or do you have the joke, Amy?
I do. Yeah.
All right. You tell the joke so it could be word for word.
It says, "Let's hope this goes better than the last time a Will Smith went across the stage in Los Angeles."
Hi, ladies and gentlemen. Who knew? Who had Will Smith doing a comedy show on their bingo card?
I did. I'm gonna mark it off on my loteria card. Bink, bink. I'm gonna put my frijole down.
Amy, what are your whole thoughts on the fact that there was a Will Smith comedy night? Obviously, I love that this is something new. It's a new way for him to raise money for his foundation as opposed to doing a golf tournament or, you know, something else. I do feel like I thought the polar plunge that Chris Taylor did for his foundation was something new and unique. Will Smith doing a comedy show. I know Cedric the Entertainer was there helping him with this. I feel like that was fun. Your overall impressions on that?
I think it's great. You know, he's one of my favorite players. I think he gets a bad rap for being so serious, but like, I think underneath it all, like, I think he's a funny guy. And, you know, I think it's great. When I found out, it made me smile. Like, good for him. Good for him having a comedy show. I mean, I know that they had other people performing on stage, but I'm a fan.
The one thing that I also think is fantastic is it seems, and I don't know for a fact, but it seemed like the whole team was there to support him. You know, and
did you see the picture where Kershaw's kind of like poking over somebody's shoulder?
It was him, Walker Buehler, and I forget who the other person. Yeah, there was a picture of them, but it seemed like. Yeah, it seemed like everybody came out. They came out with their wives or their significant others, and I just think it's great. We saw this in the off season. This team seems to be very supportive of each other when they have causes. This is another team builder exercise. I know we've talked a lot about how this team seems to really focus on they're together. They support each other. Look, when you win 14 out of 16, things are really going well. I think they genuinely enjoy each other's company, you know? So,
You've got to have that camaraderie though, because it's not as much as everybody hates it. It's not always about winning. They're going to have bad days. So the fact that they gel so well together, that's what picks each other up. That's what affords them to be able to support each other when whoever's having a down moment or the team itself is having a down moment. I love how cohesive they are. I think my only want would just as a fan, I want them to peel back the curtain a little bit more. I want to see the fun. I want to see the jokes, the playing around. Because I think off the field, that just it makes it feel like we get that look inside the team.
absolutely. And like I said, I fully expect footage of this is going to show up on Backstage Dodgers. We're going to go ahead and see it later on, but just from seeing the pictures that the Dodgers themselves have put on and other people that were covering the event, it sounded like it was fun and it's something fresh. We're going to give you guys a series of updates on this show. As you guys know, if you're a loyal listener to this show, you know we like to track stories and we like to give you guys updates on these stories. At the time that we're dropping this episode, it's going to be the beginning of the Doyers and the show pods. So enjoy that. We're going to talk about the Doyers and the pod and the show pods in the next episode. But for right now, this episode,
Oh,
we're gonna talk.
that was
Yeah.
another song opportunity that you didn't take advantage of in the next
Which one?
episode.
Which one?
That was Dre. You could have gone with a Dre drop right there.
Well, go ahead.
I'm not gonna sing it
Why not?
because they're like no carry on.
What's the matter? I still don't know what you're talking about. Why don't you sing it? Give me a few bars.
Oh, I'm not falling for that. Let's
Why not?
move on to the next because it
Whatever.
it doesn't start out with the computer, not the computer, the piano. Dun, dun, dun. No, I'm not gonna do it. Carry on.
Whatever. You're no fun. You're no fun.
Da-da-da-da-da.
Why are you such a party pooper? Anyways, so look, I know we've covered this story to death, and I know a lot of you are over this. So we're just going to go ahead and mention. Amy, do you want to give us the update on Ippei?
Yes, I just have a brief sentence so that we don't kill you guys with this update. The U.S. Department of Justice, he did just have the initial part of the trial, I don't know, the arraignment, whatever.
He pleaded guilty.
Yeah, I didn't get that piece. Sorry, guys. But essentially, they found that Ippei fraudulently obtained 16 million now. So the number is $16,975,010 fraudulently obtained from Shohei's accounts. And if you look at the court documents, there are even things for how he went about it, defrauding him out of 60,000 for dental payments and whatnot between accounts, getting a check, putting it in his own account, having, things paid out of Shohei's debit account. Like the guy put some work in. So yes, he did plead guilty to this.
One of the things that I find fascinating about this story is the number keeps changing. From when the story broke, it was 4 million, then it went up to another number. I before this, I had seen somewhere it was like close to 17 million. It's just fascinating how he was able to do this and go so long. But the other thing that's coming out of this is, and it was reports today that they may be developing a television program about this whole Shohei and Ippei drama. And one of the things, Amy, is this. There is a show that it's going to be on Hulu in the summer about, I don't know how much of a basketball fan you are, but do you remember Donald Sterling, the owner of the Clippers?
Vaguely. I left my basketball days behind in the early 2000s.
So basically he was a raging racist. And so
great.
He was caught on tape by his then girlfriend just saying some really racist shit, and it turned into a big they ended up removing, they're forcing him to sell the team.
As
Sell the
well they
Clippers.
should.
So there is a TV series that will be debuting this summer on Hulu about that. And there's a part of me that might, out of curiosity, might check it out just to see. I like the Lakers show that was on HBO. That was part of me enjoyed that show. I didn't go back for the second season, but you could tell it's like some parts they exaggerate, other parts they don't. Like Jerry West's characterization. So for me, do I have a desire to see a Shohei Ippei television show? No. Might I check it out just for curiosity, just to see what outlandish things they do with it? Maybe, but I think this show is probably going to play more with non-baseball fans than baseball fans, but I could be wrong. Amy, would you see a show about the Ippei Otani, a dramatization of it?
I mean, I guess it depends on how easy it is to get, right? Is it going to be something where we all have access to it, or do I have to go do a trial, get another streaming service? Because at this point, I am maxed out. But
like HBO maxed out, or
hi? Wow, look at you!
Boyer's Comedy Night, 2 shows nightly at the Pacoima Hilton. Everybody,
I'd like my money back. Can I speak to a manager, please? I will only tip my servers. That's it.
Hater.
I had the Haterade tonight. It was on the happy hour menu. I don't know. I might check it out, but I don't think I would search it out. I always think it's funny. You sent me the article about it, and I was just kind of perusing it. And I think you're right. I think it will be more geared towards maybe people who might just be casually interested in the story. They did say that they would show like Shohei's rise through, baseball and then how this all happened. But I always think it's interesting. I don't think that they shouldn't do it, but it's always interesting when you get one of these articles and it's all like not opinion, but it's like fluff. And then all of a sudden at the end, it's, here's his stats. Here's how he's hitting right now. It's like this serious topic. This is what we're going to do. We're going to have a TV show, but also he's hitting, he is 0 for 4. And it's like, way to bring reality into it.
It seems like they're trying to cash into the Otani business because they see how lucrative this is. But like I said, I think you bring up excellent points. Depending what network ends up doing this, there is probably a curiosity at least for me to see how much they get right in the story.
I wouldn't not watch it. I mean, I watched, what was it, the OJ Simpson one that came out a couple years ago, mostly to your point. Okay, how accurate is this against what I remember versus like, okay, what flair, what drama are they adding to it?
I thought the OJ one was very entertaining. And like I said, I thought the Lakers series was entertaining. But you do have to be able to separate fact from fiction. So I'm curious.
People are gonna take it like, oh, this is a documentary, like this is all true, and it's like,
yeah,
little suspension of disbelief there with the facts.
Exactly. So like I said, we were gonna update you guys on a lot of stories. One of the stories, John Heyman was tweeting about the umpire situation in Robot Umps. Amy, what can you tell us about that?
So yeah, he actually wrote it's an article in the New York Post, and it was mainly on like the automated ball strike system. He threw in things like, is the spin rate, is how people are pitching now a factor in why so many calls are being either misread. I don't know to the Angel Hernandez degree of 6 inches off the plate, but is that a factor? And so he said 2 reasons that he was discussing kind of the pro for the robot umps would be that they're batting 1,000. They have a better chance of being right. Statistically speaking, he was saying that 70% of umpires are still capable, but obviously the younger ones are better than the older ones, just because if there are new factors that are playing into this, that's going to help give the younger umpires an edge. And then he said the second reason was the lack of emotion, because as we're seeing a lot, umpires are being triggered. And in his opinion, it's happening too often that players, managers are being ejected from games. And this has an impact on the outcome of a game. So one of his examples, obviously, was Aaron Boone, who we saw recently, who got ejected when a fan mouthed off. But Aaron Judge just got his first ejection. And it was for him saying something on the way to the dugout, essentially, like, I think it was something like effing BS or something like that. Couldn't quite make it out from the article, but he got ejected for that. And it just to take one of the star players of the game out like that, just did your feelings get hurt because he said something? Was the call accurate? I mean, I guess the question then becomes: do we remove the emotion from the game at this point and go with something a little more automated, and then keep humans peripherally on that?
Well, that's my biggest issue with what Heyman wrote. In terms of, I disagree with him like that. And Max Scherzer said this too when he was talking about the human element with umpires. There's two reasons why I think the whole you can't get rid of it, because I think either managers, players, even umpires to a certain extent, they need the ability to go ahead and vent and let things go out, because there are times where teams are struggling, right? And look, it's happened before. A manager will go throw on purpose, try to get himself thrown out of a game to try to motivate his team. Now, I know you can sit here on principle and say, well, that's not right. He shouldn't do that. But there are many times that managers in the past have purposely done that, right? And sometimes you need to be look, there I forget who the player was. There was a time that he got thrown out of the game, and the next day he went and he apologized to the umpire because he knew he had gone too far with some of the things he said, but he needed to get that out of him, right? It's a long season. And the other reason why I don't like it, it's the theater. It's the theater. I mean, this has been going on for decades. Go back and watch especially with Doyer fans, they loved when Tommy Lasorda would come out to argue.
Fine, then they need to use microphones like I think you said a couple episodes. Fine, we need to mic them up then, because if they are going to get ejected on this emotion, I want to hear it.
Well, and I think that was so great about the Aaron Boone thing, because what they picked up was the umpire saying, I don't care, when Boone was like, I wasn't the one who said it, right? So it's the theater, and I get it. You don't want your sport known for this, but it's going to draw attention. It's going to get eyes on it when people see. Like, one of my favorite videos, and I will watch it to this day, was when Noah Syndergaard threw at Chase Utley, and the bench is cleared, and you hear the full conversation between the Mets manager Collins and the first base umpire. And you hear the whole conversation, and Collins is like, this is BS. You guys got to give us even though they didn't specifically say what they were talking about, we all knew what the conversation was about. It was about what happened between the Doyers and the Mets in the playoffs the previous year. Like, that kind of stuff, to me, again, I get it. You probably don't want that kind of attention on your sport, but it was fascinating theater.
But isn't that justified, though? Like, that level of theater, sure, is justified. But if I don't agree with the call, and some of these umps have been making egregious calls, if I want to say that that's bullshit and I'm walking back to the dugout, like, does that really warrant getting thrown out? Like, the examples you gave, that makes sense. Motivator, theater, whatever. But like what Aaron Judge did, that to me is like, I mean, aren't we just being, I hate to say this, but a little too sensitive?
Well, okay.
In that respect, in those cases, I think that's where Heyman was like, they're being triggered by like tiny little things now. Like, come on, guys. Like, okay, it's bullshit. He doesn't agree with your call. Great. Let him walk back and, whatever. See how it shakes out the next time. But it's not like he was in his face yelling at him, this is F and BS, like whatever. Like, he was walking back to the dugout. I think that's the opposite of what you're trying to say. And I think that's the stuff where, like, come on, let's grow a little thicker skin, dude.
Well, I see your point there. Now, I don't know what at bat that was that Aaron Judge got thrown out, but I am curious if this was something that built throughout the game. Now, if it's this first at bat and he's walking away and he says that's bullshit and the umpire threw him out, I agree with you. Then, like, what are you doing, bro? You got to turn the other cheek. Just walk away. Don't, as the umpire here, you can't put yourself in that position. But let's say that Judge this is his third or his fourth at bat of the game, and the whole game, Aaron Judge has been saying shit to the umpire, and it builds up and it builds up. And really, what the umpire is doing is he's not throwing him out for what he said in this specific at bat. It's the accumulation of what he had been saying the whole game.
But I guess and I'm siding with Aaron Judge on this. Like, he's never been thrown out in his whole career. So like this is the first time, and it wasn't like he was in somebody's face, like if this is going to be my first time getting thrown out, this is like a slap on the wrist. This isn't a throw me out of the game type of event. I'm trying to find in the article where they said what inning. It doesn't mention that. But he's one of the ones, and this was something I was looking at that's going to impact what we talk about. I think we were talking about it last episode. My mistake. But Aaron Judge leads with 440 bad strike calls in the MLB since 2018. Second to that is Mookie Betts with 441, which is something that we had talked about in previous episodes, that these guys get consistent bad calls. Like, that is going to build up over time. And the worst that Aaron Judge did was walk away and utter something. Like, the dude has 444 bad calls. Like, he's like that's like
So let me ask you this, Amy. Do you think the fact that there is this electronic strike zone that everybody who's watching the game at home can see what is a ball and a strike, do you think that has put the umpires on edge to know that every little thing they do is being scrutinized? Like they may feel like that. Look, I'm trying to be fair to the umpires in this situation because I am a person who is just like, the umpires are always wrong and all that stuff. So I'm trying to be fair, because they do take a lot of shit. Okay. Because I will say this, even if we do get an electronic strike zone, I guarantee you there's still going to be players. The machine's going to call it a strike and they're going to get pissed and say that wasn't a strike.
Well, we talked about this before. Fans do that now. You'll hear the whole stadium like, ugh, and it's so loud. I'll go check game day and I'm like, dude, that was in the zone. That was a strike. Like,
exactly.
Legit, that was a strike. I think this takes away all of the emotion on both sides, though. Like, it vindicates the umpires, who, again, I don't want to just be coming down on them. They have a hard job. I've said this before. I would squirrel out, like total glitter squirrel. Oh my gosh. Oh, I was supposed to be making a call right here. But I think there's a happy medium. So Heyman mentioned in this article that the players that were asked about this, they're all split. There are two options. So in AAA, in select parks since 2022, they were trying this out, and then they tried it out everywhere last year. So the two ways, 3 games a week, they're using the robot umpires completely. And then the other 3 games, they have a robot umpire challenge system. And so with that, they get 3 challenges a game. And if the umpire continues to make wrong calls, then they continue to maintain their challenges. So a lot of the players in that split of how they want to handle this, a lot of them were more just for the challenge side. Like, we don't need to go robot umpire full game, but I do want to be able to challenge. And then, if you made a really egregious call 6 inches off the plate, we retain our challenge and we go on with the game. And like you said, from everything you're hearing, it's a, hey, let's check it. Okay, move on. I think you can keep the human aspect and marry it with the robot side and still keep some of that emotion, because the umpires can still throw people out, but also maybe take some of that pressure off the umpires where they don't feel like they're being scrutinized, because it is vindicating them in some cases. I think it's a happy medium.
I think that is the perfect compromise. I think that is definitely the way to go on that.
Well, thank you. I'm going to curtsy, even though it wasn't fully my idea.
Take credit for it. You do it, girl.
Hey, I've been all for some type of challenge system for a while, so I just hop on my train.
There's another story that we want to touch on, and this draft memo story. Amy, can you lay it out for our viewers and our listeners?
Yeah. So essentially, the MLB sent out a memo. I'm trying to find we have so many articles across the board. I believe it was ESPN that essentially the MLB sent out a warning to the clubs. Don't encourage players to, withdraw from, or I don't even know what I wrote on my notes here, but essentially with the MLB draft, don't withdraw from high school to become eligible to sign as international players. So they had an example of this a couple years ago. It looks like my ESPN account just reset, so I don't have the information on there, but they're seeing such a prevalence of this at this point that a warning had to be sent out, because you don't want players dropping out of high school and dealing with the repercussions.
Look, this is something I think that has been building over years. It goes back to the fact that I had heard kids in high school wanted to get Tommy John surgery so they could get their Tommy John out of the way. Look, I get it. Sometimes there are kids and there's families that they see the only way out of this is if my kid makes it big in sports, he gets that big payday. It's going to end up helping the family. So I see it all the time in youth sports with my daughter. The parents are so they're driving their children, and you sit there and you wonder, is this what the kid wants to do? Does like the kid want this, or is this what the parents want? When I came across this story, I was shocked that this was actually a thing, right?
Well, and the point you just made actually goes to our next update. So I'm going to put a pin in part of that to pull back out in a second because you make an excellent point.
I mean, this just the thing is the fact that kids were actually quitting high school and playing on the international side so they could get drafted. It's I get it because sometimes I sit there and I look at kids and I go, oh, I joke around. My friends and I have this thing where it's Mamba mentality, right? And if you see a kid who's not like driven and it's just like eats, breathes, sleeps baseball, we think they don't have Mamba mentality. They're never going to make it, right? But then you also like, let kids be kids, right? You go back to when you were a kid and it's like, yeah, I like playing baseball, but at the same time, I want to go hang out with my friends. I want to go do, shit that normal kids do.
So Joe Kelly actually alludes to that in his book, a damn near perfect game, about how he was pushed into baseball a little bit, but also like he took a break to go skateboard and do what made him happy. And then he came back to the game and loved it, but he got to like take time off and be a kid. And I think that's something that a lot of people don't realize. Like, I hear a lot of criticism of players too, of just like, well, did you hear that media interview? Like, what were they even saying? Or they just spout the same things. And it's like, do you understand that these kids have been playing baseball, especially if they're making it to the show? They've been playing it since they were kids. Like, they have eaten, slept, breathed this since they were kids. What other life did they have? Especially then coming up, making it through the minors. Like, again, you are so focused on getting your spot there. Like, when did they get to live a regular human existence like the rest of us? Like, we all kind of push ourselves, like, you have your job, you do your baseball stuff on the side, you go to games. I do the same thing. I have a hard time finding time to do all the regular little things. And I'm not super focused, laser focused on just baseball. Like, I don't know that necessarily everybody even gets a fair shot at being socialized like a quote unquote normal person. And we don't take that into consideration. And now you have kids dropping out of high school. Like,
It's just it's a way to circumvent the rules, right? You saw this
Mhm.
in basketball when basketball came with the one and done, and that was like, okay, well, don't go to college then. Go play in China, go play overseas,
Mhm.
and then you'll be eligible for the draft. Look, in the end, it's hard. It's easy for me to sit there and say, well, if these kids are quitting high school, they can get their GED, but there is something about
With
an
what time?
educate. Yeah, there is something about an education that I feel is important because I, this is a common trait I think probably around most athletes is they feel they're not going to fail, especially when they're young. But there's a good chance that I mean I know players I played with kids that I thought were so freaking good and they never even got a whiff. They didn't even get to the minors. They didn't even get drafted. So there is a possibility that you're not going to make it. And then what do you do? Okay, well, do I go to college and I've been out of
I
school?
only know baseball. Like,
Yeah.
maybe you get to coach, but like, did you make it far enough to learn how to speak? Because like coaching, just because you play baseball doesn't mean it translates into, oh, I can go be a commentator, I can go be a coach. Because if you don't have that backup in how to speak to people, how to lead, how to, do a play by play of a game, like it doesn't. Not every player can just break into other sections of baseball. Like it's not a given. I
And I know also we just every situation is different because I know people that just aren't good students. Like school is just not for them. So to force school on them, I get it. It's just like, look, maybe they're good at something else. They're on hands. Maybe pursuing a baseball opportunity will open a door for them to something else, and that ends up being their future. So
That's a larger commentary on society and learning
yeah,
styles and jobs. Like, don't hold on. I'm nudging my soapbox away so I don't step on it. But I did find the article, and they did, just to kind of give context, especially if some people are visual learners. They used the example of shortstop Lucius Fox in 2015. So he was a native of the Bahamas. He moved to Florida to play high school baseball, and he was regarded as a fringe first round prospect after his junior year. But he moved back to the Bahamas, was declared a free agent by the league, and eventually signed with the bigger bonus with the San Francisco Giants. Had he stayed in Florida in high school, he probably wouldn't have qualified for that large of a bonus. So, I mean, I get it. Players are going to try to get that edge wherever they can, especially if you're, like you said, if they're coming from different circumstances where they need that money. It just, there has to be a better way, right? There has to be a better way than MLB teams encouraging them to quit so the MLB team can profit, and in turn, hopefully so can this player. But there's got to be a better way.
And that's what it is. Like, look, if the family and the kid are making the decision, then yeah, you may not agree with it, but that's on them. But for Major League Baseball to be suggesting or hinting, that might be going a little too far, because that's also them trying to circumvent the rules. It's a fascinating story. I don't honestly, just you and I talking about it right now, I don't know which is right or wrong, because look, like I said, there may be a kid who is super talented and they are going to benefit from training with professionals as opposed to be training with amateurs. So look, I can see how you can make an argument both ways on this story.
Mm-hmm. I think maybe what the MLB is arguing against is the prevalence of a team in a position of authority encouraging somebody to quit high school, where in that situation it's implied that they're going to have that the team is going to have financial gain if this happens, versus I'm altruistically looking out for this kid of, hey, we're going to sign you no matter what, but if you go over here, we can do a lot better for you. Maybe that is how the conversation's going. Maybe it's not, but I think that's where it gets a little muddy.
Now, absolutely. And speaking of more shady shit, you got another story here that involves Fanatics, right, Amy?
Oh man. Yeah. So there was a story in The Athletic by Brittany Garali about, so there's I was not familiar with this until this article, so you guys may already know, but Perfect Game has partnered with Fanatics, and they are a travel team tournament. They're located in 41 states, 12 different countries. But essentially, Fanatics is producing like trading cards, collectibles, other memorabilia. But in order for players to play in this tournament, it's required that these amateur players sign away their name, their image, their likeness rights to participate. And so, what some people are saying is this is exploitative. It's unethical, and it's a cost against their future earnings. So a lot of agents are against this, even though they can't officially represent amateur players until they're drafted by a professional organization. But there's a lot going back and forth about, is it fair to lock up and, essentially an underage kid's likeness and the rights to any of that goes against, if they do get, drafted, end up making it to the show, and now potentially Fanatics could be like, we don't need to make a deal with you for any of these other things because we've actually got a bunch of this warehoused over here. We'll just use this. So little bit of muddy water here too.
Look, it is interesting when you have these kind of partnerships. Like you had mentioned this on our last episode with Evan Drellich, calling out the fact that how much money the Major League Baseball Players Union is getting from Fanatics. So when they made that statement that, oh, this is all on Nike, Fanatics is absolved of this, it's hard to kind of take them at their word, because it's like, wait, are you saying this because Fanatics is a partner for you and you want to protect your partner? This kind of situation here, it seems like it's all about the money. And I do think it's exploitive. I think you are taking advantage because these kids are going to do whatever they can do, going back to, quitting a high school and moving out of the country. They are looking for an advantage. They are looking like anybody would in terms of what is going to help me to get to my goal. What is going to help me to get to my next level? So you're going to sit there and you're going to sacrifice. Like, similar situation. I know it's not apples to apples here, but when you have minor leaguers who are clearly ready to go up to the major leagues, but you have major league teams that keep them down in the minors because you don't want to start the clock, so you have to pay them. That to me is just like, all right, let's be fair. All right. So to have these kids have to sign away, I just don't understand. Why do they have to sign away? Why can't it be where you
Mutually
work something?
beneficial?
Exactly.
Or you put an expiration date on it. Okay, we have the rights for this for 2 years. All right, you know what? I could potentially see, I'm still in high school, or, maybe I'm in my first year of college, can't really earn money anyway. That's fine. You have the rights for X amount of time. And then by the time I make it to the majors, my likeness, my signature, my stat, whatever you own of mine, the image, the name, the likeness rights, that's mine. That's like saying I am a whole person. I was born into this world 100%, but now Fanatics actually owns like 40% of me. Like, what? Like, you I didn't even realize I was giving away my stock in myself, because when I was underage, to my parents, had no idea. They were just signing me up for this tournament. How many people are actually even reading the fine print? I know I go through contracts and I read all the way through, but I'm the anomaly there. Not a lot of people do that. And something else that came out of this article that I wasn't aware of, they mentioned that Fanatics has been heavily investing in baseball lately, but I didn't realize they had bought Topps, the baseball card company, until I read this article. So they said, let's see, it made headlines in 2022. It pried the rights to make trading cards from Topps, taking over MLB licensing and ending a relationship that dated back to 1952, and then later bought Topps outright. So, like, not only, hey, I'm going to take this contract, but also, you know what? We're just going to absorb you into our corporation. So I think it can be easily solved. Put an expiration date on it, because agents are encouraging kids, well, just don't play in this tournament. But then you have parents who have, again, back to the points we were making earlier, my kid's been on this path all this time. If this is the opportunity that they have to see a scout, and this is my only way, I've got to sign this. And it's like, there's got to be other tournaments out there. There's got to be other ways, or lobby to, hey, we've got to put an expiration date on this. This is, you can't have access to my kid's likeness. Like, that's...
Yeah, I mean, you're costing future earnings. And at that point, it makes it, I think, unethical.
Yeah.
And I mean, even when minor leaguers come up in Major League Baseball, there's arbitration. In this deal, you don't even have that. You don't even have the right to renegotiate things. So, yeah, that's
even your signature. Like, you have the right to my signature. Like, the only person that has that really right now is my bank on the signing card, so that they can authenticate my account. Like, what?
It is super shady, and I sit there and I always think it reminds me when players do, signings, when they have shows where they're either signing a picture that you bring in, or a baseball card and all that stuff. And you sit there and you wonder, okay, how much of that money are you getting? Of course, if you're a bigger star, I'm assuming you're getting a larger percentage. But for these kids to have everything taken away from them, that to me is just not right.
I mean, I get why the agents are on the kid's side, because eventually they will have that relationship with them down the line, and that's a cost to their bottom line as well. But at least somebody is lobbying for them, because as we've seen in the news, the agents lately have had kind of a back and forth battle, like whether in this case they're kind of lobbying on behalf of the kiddos coming up. But then you had brought, the story to my attention a couple weeks ago where, we heard about, well, go ahead. It's
a perfect segue. It's Jordan Montgomery. We just saw him recently pitch. He plays for the Serpientes. He pitched against the Doyers. He left Scott Boras. And look,
nobody leaves Scott Boras.
a lot of people were expecting that Jordan Montgomery was going to get a huge payday, and there was a lot of talk over the offseason with guys like Bellinger, and what was another client of his? I think it was Snell. Snell is another
Snell,
client.
JD Martinez. There's so many. Pick one.
Yeah, that they didn't end up getting the long-term contracts. Like, one of the things that he can always say he won is that the per average was higher. So the fact that Jordan Montgomery left the Boras, that to me is just a story to keep an eye on, because
Mhm.
I am curious if this is finally, you're going to start to see chinks in his armor, in Boras's armor. Like, is this going to, now realistically, is it going to lead to a max exodus? No, probably not. But I am curious as to what you're talking about. If you're going to start to see a dynamic that changes between agents and players, because to my understanding, it's always like, hey, the agent represents the player. So you need to
Mhm.
do what's best for me, not what's best for you. And considering that
That's that
we're
fiduciary responsibility in general for whether you're a real estate agent, whether you're a sports agent, your primary responsibility is to your client. And great, he got them, like you said, a better like annual average salary. But if these guys were hoping for a little more security with the multi-year contract, none of the Boris Four plus JD Martinez plus some of the other guys that he represented, none of them got that from what we saw. I don't think. I don't think there were any multi-year deals for his guys.
well, I mean, there's a lot of options involved in those deals that are
Yeah,
technically multi-year deals,
but
but
not the multi-year deals these guys wanted. I mean,
and to be fair to Boris, we don't know if any of that shit was true. You know,
fair. That's fair.
that stuff that stuff was leaked, but it is something to keep an eye on, because I do feel we're going to have labor issues once again once these contracts are up, because things are changing. I mean, the Bravos, for example, they are no longer on Bally. I don't know if you saw the pictures all over social media that you tuned into the Bally network, and the game was not available.
I
And
had my
look,
friend who watches the Angels games couldn't access them last week because of the Bally who? Um
Bali High, that special island,
Oh,
Bali
here we go. I am
High,
not taking the base running blunder on this one. But
for
the
you
fact
South Pacific fans.
oh
So
dear. But for people to not be able, I mean, it's already bad enough for Dodgers fans, right? Like we get
yeah,
blacked out in our own city. But like
yeah.
to not have access to your game at all, like what?
So I mean, that's why I think it is something to keep an eye on, and of course we're going to continue to update these stories, because a lot of everybody says, well, these owners are making a lot of money, and the reason why they're making a lot of money is because of these TV deals. Well, if these TV deals start going away, what is going to happen to Major League Baseball? What is going to happen to salaries? So that's all stuff to keep an eye on. Amy, good stuff here. Do you have any last words before we end the show?
Yeah, Andy McCullough's book, The Last of His Kind, about Clayton Kershaw just came out. I'm trying to make time to read it, but I noticed some of our listeners are also reading it, so sounds like we have an impromptu book club. So,
All right. Yeah. So let us know if you have already read it, your thoughts on this. I'm sure we'll go ahead and discuss this on future episodes.
I
So,
started the prologue.
all right.
Like,
So
I'm sucked in. Don't get me wrong. I just need to have time to read it.
Amy's going to give us a review of her prologue on the next episode. So, once again, for those of you listening on the audio portion, please make sure you're subscribed to the podcast. Rate us, write us a review, help spread the word. If you're watching us on YouTube, make sure you're subscribed to our YouTube channel. Hit that subscribe button, hit the notification button, give us a thumbs up, leave us comments, let us know what you thought of the show. And make sure you're following us on social media, on X at BB Shangri-La, on Instagram, YouTube, and Twitch at Baseball Shangri-La. She is Amy Cuevas. I am Juan Ramirez. You have been listening or watching Baseball Shangri-La. We'll see you next time. Amy, say goodbye to the people.
Goodbye, people.